So for each carving, start off with lots of drawings in an ordinary A4 sketch pad, and you're just looking for just little ideas, and then you find something that resonates, and it might be based on an idea like the one behind it is the cycle of the self in the cycle of life, death and rebirth, and then you have to do a very big drawing, so it's a cartoon the same size as the wood, so you have to make sure you've got the wood, you draw the big drawing, and you spend ages working it out and reconfiguring it, because generally if it works in the drawing, then it'll work in the carving. And that's quite a long process. It doesn't have to be. The drawing might take a week, or it might take a couple of days or a few hours, but once you've got it right in the drawing, then the wood is either chainsawed out or bandsawed, and then it's carved. And the carving, as I mentioned to you earlier, it starts full of, you're full of enthusiasm, you think, oh, this is going to work, and it looks really good initially, and then it goes to a slightly dull stage where it perhaps isn't working, where everything just looks too big, and it only looks too big because it hasn't been carved. And then the later stages, everything's coming together, the forms are slimming down, you're getting the kind of little vibration, and suddenly you think, yes, it is working, and the journey's been worth it. And then you keep pushing it until the forms support themselves without being too thin or too big. And then it's finished. So then that's the end of the journey for that carving. And material is important. It's oak wood. Oak is very hard timber. It's very resistant. Lime wood is very soft, but it's almost too easy. It's too fluid a carving. So it's quite nice being up against something which is quite resistant, and you're trying to win something from it, and you need to be true to the material, because if you're not, the whole thing falls apart. If you're doing the wrong thing with the grain, it just breaks. So you're always aware of that, and obviously that determines the design. You don't let it completely determine the design, but all these things have to come together. With the forms, I was looking at rocks, so a lot of the forms are borrowed or mimicking the forms at Broadhaven Beach, Broadhaven South, where you've got these incredibly eroded rocks, and they've been eroded in a series of concave shapes, as though the sea has literally eaten away the rock, and then you're left with this kind of shimmering form. So the forms came from that, and this is obviously fossils, and so, as you say, this is the first one in the exhibition here, so all the work is probably about 4 years old, and then gradually the fossil bit became less interesting, but the forms in between became more interesting, and then what to do with them. And with wood, you're always trying to open it out, so you're actually denying its volume. And by piercing them, then you're opening the back out and the front, and it gives them a kind of tension which they don't have when they're kind of solid lumps. If I wasn't meditating, I don't think these would have happened. So it's like seeing the world through the meditation. What's lovely about meditation is the essence of things. So like we sit in silence, you can't add anything to silence. If you add something to silence, then that's noise. So the absolute minimum of silence is just absolute silence. Or emptiness. Again, if you add something to emptiness, you have stuff. So it's paring things down to these essences. And even if you're doing, that looks quite chaotic, but again, with chaos, if you take something away, then it's no longer chaos. So everything has its own kind of integrity. So yes, the meditation has been very important. You tend to see the world through that. And not even when you meet people, you're meeting their energy and not necessarily about, whether they've got money or not or what they drive. It's a different experience. So these are slightly based on stalactites, stalagmites. They're in oak as the rest, and there's a kind of slower movement and a kind of floatiness. And these are probably the quickest to do, if that helps. I think that was probably less than a week's work, whereas the other ones are more like 15 weeks' work. Yeah. But whether it's fast or slow is no indication of whether it's actually going to work or not. You just take it through to the end. So the kind of theme of creation runs through everything. And we're living it out now. It's something that happened a long time ago. It's happening in our bodies, our cells are being born, dying. It's happening out there in the world, it's happening in the environment. And it's a very special thing. So trying to say, look, this matters. We might be the centre of our own worlds, but we're just part of this huge, these huge cycles of creation, destruction, and if you imagine with mankind and religion, that they put the earth at the centre of the universe, and then they realised the sun didn't go round the earth, and then later realised we're just some tiny galaxy and there's millions of them, and so suddenly the self is reduced, and with these, just trying to say we're just part of energy, rather than, and it is a big picture, but we're just something very small in there, and that's fine. So.